Morning, everybody. How are we doing today? It's Saturday morning. My band slash music project is a show this evening. Kind of excited about it. It's a little trio. It's not jazz at all. It's people compare it to the Gorillaz, Purity Ring. I mean, it's synth guitar, pop with a real darkness to it. And one of my big influences, honestly, was the Swans. I don't know if anybody remembers the Swans, but White Light, the Mouth of Infinity, is that what it was called? I think it was the name of that record. Failure. Some of the songs on that record were just so dark, foreboding, and always kind of inspired me in a way, though, because I loved the polished grit. I mean, it was dark, but it had some production value and some starkness that, I mean, it was a fine record, to be honest. White Light at the Mouth of Infinity, I think that's what it was called. Failure, the heavyweight of failures. And of course, Michael Gira, I say of course, like people know this, but Michael Gira struggled a lot with alcoholism, and a lot of his songs touch on some of that. And I can't think of her name. She sings on some of it too. They had a couple other side projects. They would work together on a lot of things. World of Skin, I think, was one of their projects. But the Swans' 80s stuff into the 90s was pretty cool stuff. But you take some of that darkness with a bit more modern elements of hip-hop, some of the beats and stuff. It's kind of what we're doing. But today I want to talk to you about the Mizell Brothers, speaking of production. And I'm a big fan. Some people don't love what they do. I like it a lot. The Mizell Brothers do some work for United Artists era Blue Note, of note, especially some of that fantastic Donald Byrd stuff, which I'm going to dive into here in a minute in some more specifics. But first I want to chronicle a little bit about the history of the Mizell Brothers, Larry and Alphonse Mizell. And Larry worked for NASA on the lunar module doing testing and programming, and he also helped invent LCD displays, liquid crystal displays. So this guy was a real technical, engineering kind of proficient mind in that regard. And then Alphonse worked with the corporation, which was the Motown production team behind the Jackson 5, ABC, all that early Motown stuff. And then he ends up producing some Jackson 5 and some Michael Jackson Music and Me early stuff. I'll show you some of the stuff they did. Again, I've heard some people who don't love Mizell Brothers for various reasons. I love their 70s funk stuff. I think it's just fantastic. And it covers like a range. Like you have early Michael, like Music and Me. Who was that young man? It's from 73, if I recall. And that's around when they started kind of being a production team on their own. Like I said, Alphonse was working with Motown going back into the late 60s. But the Jackson 5 Skyrider, which is not a Jackson 5 record you see a whole lot of. Hallelujah Day was the R&B hit on that record. Hell Up in Harlem by Edwin Starr. And Edwin Starr, of course, was renowned for War, good God. What is it? That song, what is it good for? This is a little bit later from a soundtrack, the Hell Up in Harlem, a blaxploitation film. You can see Alphonse and Larry Mizell right there, actually. And they used a lot of the same musicians on a lot of their sessions. And Edwin Starr was a great singer. And of course, he was kind of a Motown guy, pretty much known for only War. What is it good for? But that Hell Up in Harlem is a fine record, a great blaxploitation soundtrack, in the vein of Superfly and Shaft and that same kind of era stuff. Still in 73 now, Donald Byrd's Street Lady, and again, this is United Artists era Blue Note. So this is not a Blue Note record in a Blue Note sense, like Frank and Out, 50s or early 60s Blue Note. This is 1973. A whole different beast. And Byrd had stayed with Blue Note through the sale to Liberty and then the sale to United Artists. But fantastic record, and really kind of a changing of Byrd's sound to some degree. Great cover. I should probably just pull that out and show it to you. There's a polish to this and a production value that you don't hear on Kofi and Ethiopia and some of those early 70s Byrd records. Just has a bit more rhythm and blues accessibility to it, which, to be honest, they dive into that even more on Places and Spaces and a couple of records I'm going to show you here in a second. Donald Byrd ended up being a teacher at, I believe, a black college for music. One of the guys' projects he puts together at that point is the Blackbirds, and this was a Mizell production on Fantasy Records. And all the Blackbird stuff's really fantastic. It's fusion funk crossover. It's very accessible. They had a few pretty big hits. They also did another blaxploitation soundtrack to Cornbread and Me. Then I love this record. And this is their second record together. Bobby Humphrey, the jazz flautist, R&B flautist, and again, very funk fusion crossover. I think some of the songs on this are just fantastic. New York Times, Satin Doll, of course, the Ellington song. Stevie Wonder's You're the Sunshine of My Life. It's great stuff. There's a record they did together right before this in '73, which I don't have. I thought I did, but either someone took it from me or I never bought it, which is possible. I do have her greatest hits, which has those songs on it, but this is Blackbird, Donald Byrd, '75. And again, it's going even more that direction. The cover wouldn't tell you so, but... And now we're getting into one of my favorite records, really, of all time. Places and Spaces. It's just a fantastic jazz fusion record. It's so much better than Bitches Brew that I almost don't feel the need to even say it. But Bitches Brew is for, again, the monocle class. And I want to touch on that real quick. My last episode, I talked about how jazz fans often drive people away from jazz. And I got some strong pushback from a few people, more in messages than actually on the comments. But my question to you is this. If it's not pretentious jazz fans that are driving people away from jazz and leading to the perception that fuck jazz is so difficult and hard to listen to, then what is it? Why do 5 times a week do people come into this coffee shop and go, I don't really like jazz? It's too... Where is that coming from if it's not from pretentious jazz fans? I mean, like I said, Hollywood television does use difficult free jazz at times to inflect a difficult person who's kind of uppity, and you know what I mean? So even Hollywood uses it as a stereotype at times in films. I remember David Lynch's Lost Highway. Bill Pullman plays some free jazz saxophone. That, I mean, of course, Lost Highway, David Lynch is not like a staple of pop culture, but it's still enough to lead to the perceptions that I think are infecting the minds of so many people. And I think it comes mostly from pretentious jazz fans going, oh, jazz is so awesome, I love it so much, check out this. And then just, if it's not that, please inform me what it is that's making so many people dislike of music. That was the pop music of this country for 40 years. That was accessible and beautiful and elegant and modern and sophisticated and romantic and melodic. And why do people not associate Chet Baker and Quiet Nights and beautiful? I mean, I don't get it. I just don't. But anyway, so Places and Spaces is one of my favorite records, really of all time. As a DJ, I played it a lot. Domino is one of my favorite songs ever. Just My Imagination's fantastic. Wind Parade, Change, makes you want to hustle. Some fun strings. Great funk production. And then you get some great Donald Byrd trumpet playing. And again, it's with a funk backdrop, not a fun stuff. Really, the entire record is one of my favorite pieces from that jazz fusion era crossover. And I play this a lot, even in the cafe. After bands are done, I'll put this on. And I always get people like, oh, what is this? This is awesome. I want stuff like this. What is this? And Bitches Brew will never do that. And again, there's some great Donald Byrd. But, and again, it just comes down to wanting to evangelize this music, get people to love it. And there's nothing wrong with liking the difficult stuff. Just have the foresight to recognize that maybe a lot of people aren't going to appreciate that, and play something they're going to enjoy more instead of trying to make yourself look like some kind of sophisticate. Fancy Dancer, Bobby Humphrey, again, the flautist. Really another fantastic record. And You Make Me Feel So Good on this is a fantastic way to start off a night. As a DJ set, or even just as a little housewarming, you have people coming by, you throw You Make Me Feel So Good on, and it's really going to set a tempo and a vibe and a mood. It's fantastic stuff. There's a couple other songs here I really liked as well too. But that was a song I really and then the next album here, this is Stepping Into Tomorrow, again by Donald Byrd from '75, as well as Places and Spaces. And these two records are really synonymous. They're pretty much from the same sessions, same guys. And I'll be honest, I love this record just as much. It's just a fantastic piece. Think Twice was sampled by electronic artist Armand Van Helden. Flowers, I think it was. The break in that. It's De La Soul sampled some of this. DJ Crush, Jay Dilla. Flowers was the name of the Armand Van Helden song. But Step Into Tomorrow was just a fantastic song. I'm going to play a little more of this here. It's the kind of stuff that I think people who are trying to get into fusion and funk crossover, and it's just a great place to start and dip your toe into the waters. Both those records are just masterpieces of accessibility, melody, funk, fusion, soul. Byrd's not the greatest singer. He has other people sing on some of the songs. He sings parts himself. There's Bobby Humphrey, looking quite gorgeous herself. Nice little collection. A great place to start with Bobby Humphrey is this collection, because it calls stuff from those first three Blue Note records I was telling you about. Harlem River Drive is fantastic. San Francisco Lights is fantastic. It's got most of the great songs, although it doesn't have You Make Me Feel So Good, which is unfortunate. And then they kind of start diving more into the R&B mainstream, the Mizells, Larry and Alphonse. And LTD, Love Unlimited, Love to the World, Love, Togetherness, and Devotion is what LTD stands for. Not to be confused with Love Unlimited Orchestra, which is a very white thing. But LTD had a huge hit on here with Love Ballad, #1 on the R&B charts in '76. Yep. And Love to the World's also a great song on this that I liked a lot. It was #27 on the R&B charts. And LTD has a lot of big records. They were big parts of the R&B, funk, slightly somewhat disco, but they really stayed more on the side of the funk and the R&B. And they go into the 80s even making hits. Didn't cross over a ton into the pop charts. I think if I remember, they had one song in the early 80s that kind of crossed over and has some accessibility to the white audiences. But they pretty much stayed an R&B group. And then one of their biggest successes was Boogie Oogie Oogie by A Taste of Honey, which is one of the great disco anthems of that era. It's just a massive song that really has stood the test of time. That I never really tire of, to be honest. It's a fun song. This is Dominoes. Just a great bass line. I'm gonna cut it out for a second so hopefully don't get edited. Melody. Again, melody is such a fucking key. Funk, pocket. Drop into a place where I can hang out. I want to be smooth and chilling and having a good time when I put your record on. I don't want to be squeaking. I don't want to be squinting. I don't want to be... I want that. It's just great stuff. It's I think it's the kind of stuff that more people want to find, and they just don't know where to find it. And these records sold pretty well. Like I said, they were sampled quite a lot. The production, the breaks, it's all there for hip-hop and electronic music to sample and borrow from, like DJ Shadow. They borrow some stuff from the Mizells at times. It's really synonymous with the 70s funk, fusion, R&B crossover era. And Byrd was really one of the professors in a literal sense, but also in a kind of a philosophical sense of jazz, R&B, fusion, funk, crossover, black church gospel. He fuses all that stuff together in such a great way. And the Mizells were at the helm for a lot of these classic pieces that really brought some great production, modern, and the strings that you hear in there. But they will let us sing and say that everything's alright. So let's not worry about tomorrow while we got. There's strings in the background and then the breaks that is reminiscent of what the RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan started doing in 94, 93, 96, 98. You listen to parts of Wu-Tang Forever, there's a lot of strings, and they use a lot of that kind of choral string sounds to bring some of those beats together. And I think they're borrowing somewhat from the Mizells at times. Not that strings hadn't been part of pop going back, to obviously Eleanor Rigby is one of the great first examples of it by the Beatles. But again, the Beatles are such an interesting bottleneck. Everything kind of goes back to that point, and everything before them comes to that point. It's just one of the coolest bottlenecks in musical history in terms of production, in terms of showmanship, in terms of pop song melody, global phenomenon. The table had been set with the jet set era and the global flight and communication, television, radio, satellite. It all allowed for the first real global phenomenon like the Beatles to happen. And some of that is beyond their influence. It just happened to be that came out at that time. But the Beatles are certainly omnipresent in the footprints of music, both before and after in their time. It's pretty omnipresent and in some ways omniscient. There's just a real wisdom to their production values. But again, this Mizell Brothers stuff is a great chunk of 70s funk, fusion, jazz, crossover, and Places and Spaces and Stepping Into Tomorrow are two of my favorite records of all time. And it's stuff that I play when I have a dinner party or guests over, or after a band plays here at the cafe, or warming up a DJ set, getting an audience into their chairs. You put some of that on and it's just really going to wash, and it's not going to be too bright, it's not going to be too up-tempo, but it's still got enough funk, fusion, production, happiness, and joy to make people have a good time. And that's really what we're after, isn't it? Having a good time. So let me know what you think about the Mizell Brothers in your comments. If you like Stepping In Tomorrow, Places and Spaces, let me know. Bobby Humphrey. If you haven't heard You Make Me Feel So Good, you should check that out. If you have comments on why you think people dislike jazz, aside from pretentious jazz fans, please let me know what you think it is. Because it ain't Ellington. It ain't Billie Holiday. It ain't Ella Fitzgerald. It's not the music itself. 90% of the jazz that was made was really accessible, fun, melodic, pocket-driven, sensual, danceable, fuckable, love-making music. It's such a small percentage of this music that it's awkward and uncomfortable and dissonant and difficult. And yet that's what gets so much professed by the jazz snobs, that it just turns people off all the fucking time. And again, it's never me saying don't like what you like. Go ahead and like whatever the fuck you want to like. Just have the decency to share with people something that they might like, to make them like jazz and not go, fuck, I'll never listen to that shit again. That's my point. It's always been my point. I'm not trying to tell people don't like what you like, don't listen to what you want to listen to, by all means. I'm saying what you profess to other people and try to get them into, show some, if a guy's never had beer before, don't give him a triple IPA. Let him start with a lager, a Pilsner, something that's accessible. If the Beatles' legacy had been reduced down to Revolution number 9, and that's most people's perception of the Beatles was number 9, and all, and that was what they thought, wouldn't that bother you? Wouldn't you be like, man, there should be more to people's recollection of the Beatles than that? And as fun as that is, and as much as that has its place in time, and as much as it's a part of the story, because it is, there's still so much more to the Beatles, volumes more, than Revolution number 9. And there's so much more to jazz than difficult screeching, honking, dissonant horns and awkwardness. And I mean, Ellington knows how to use dissonance. Monk knew how to use dissonance. It's called resolve. Figure it out. And I wish as fans we could be more cognizant of making people love this music. And if it's not about how we want people to perceive us, then what is it about? Because most people pick the car they drive in part because they want to be perceived by others a certain way. Most people dress a certain way because they want to be perceived a certain way by others. The music we listen to is part of that mask, that cloak that we use to shape how people see us. And the intellectuals always want to come off as so sophisticated and modern and have an air of significance and importance about who they are. And it's fine. Just have the decency to start people off with beginner stuff that they're going to love. And everyone's going to love some Dave Brubeck, Take 5. Everyone's going to enjoy. It's just Paul Desmond's going to creep into their head and be like, oh, I love this. I've heard this. What is this again? I mean, that's fantastic. And don't be too cool for Brubeck, because there's nothing cooler than that. That's the cool. So if you think you're cooler than that, you're actually not cool. Take that, put that in your pocket, let it stew for a minute, and chew on that for a minute. So that's the end of my episode today. Again, Mizell Brothers, funky, classic, jazz, fusion, R&B, gospel crossover. The Black Church is omnipresent, and a lot of that Donald Byrd stuff, a lot of the Blackbird stuff, the Bobby Humphrey stuff. It's really, again, it's not Blue Note in the Blue Note sense of Alfred Lion and Frank Wolf. It's Blue Note from a 70s mass label, United Artists, funk soul production level. Great stuff. I love it. I think you will dig it if you don't have it. And I think Places and Spaces and Subject to Tomorrow are two records that if you buy them, you will play them for the rest of your life. I've never really tired of them. And there's not a lot of music you can say that about. Most music you kind of weary of it at points. I mean, Bob Marley, that's forever shit. The Mizell Byrd stuff, especially those two records, it's fantastic stuff. So anyway, that's all I got for you today. If you want to support the channel, please go to my Patreon, help support. If you want to just throw some money at the cafe and help me pay my bills, that's always supported. There's a link to PayPal in the description. You can use super thanks through YouTube. It's always helpful. Again, in a small town, and half the town doesn't come in. They're afraid of this liberal mindset here of me playing black music, obviously, which is part of the American dichotomy, and it's frustrating, obviously, at times. So y'all be blessed, y'all be safe. Appreciate you all. Love all your support. I even love the people who push back for the most part. The one guy who's always Trump 24. Go watch a different channel, brother. This ain't for you. I mean, this ain't for you. I don't know why you got to keep... I mean, I suppose that's why they call them trolls. Because you keep posting your stupid comments that nobody wants to see or read. I don't know if you even watch. I think you're just trying to be offensive and contradictory. But doesn't matter. Y'all be good. Y'all be safe. We'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.